morning, everyone. Welcome to Talking Horses. Sarah Albadwe and Andy Serling. As we close out the weekend with a 9-race card today after some eventful Triple Crown preps yesterday. Obviously, the best performance was Nysos, who won't be able to run in the Kentucky Derby, unfortunately. He, of course, can run the Preakness and the Belmont Stakes. The performance by Fierceness, any opinions on Fierceness's disappointment yesterday?
It was a slow race overall, and I didn't really see a major excuse for him. I know the winner of the race got away with some pretty moderate fractions, but I felt as though he had every chance at the top of the stretch and kind of just didn't fire on the day. And it seems as though the horse that was able to beat him for second, Domestic Product, maybe had more adversity to deal with coming up the rail and rallying from a little bit further back from him. So I didn't really feel as though I could make a major excuse for him coming back other than perhaps needing one off a little bit of a break.
Couple of horses don't usually need a race off the layoff, and a horse that ran as well as he did in the Breeders' Cup, and obviously while he has enormous talent, I think at this point you have to question whether or not Fierceness is one of these horses that is able to perform very well under the most ideal circumstances. And when somebody throws a little straw in his, I mean, the straw in his path yesterday was, he broke a step slow yesterday and got, you know, pushed a little wide in the first turn. But when you're 1-5 and you ran a 105 Beyer and won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile the way he did, and one of the most impressive performances we've ever seen in that race,
it shouldn't matter.
You're supposed to run better than getting a 79 Beyer in your first start. It's his first start, but I mean, I guess the plan with him was this race and then the Florida Derby. We'll see. His next race becomes extremely important for him, and I think you have to question whether there's some chinks in his armor at that point. Fortunately for him, he won't have to face Nysos, who does look like the best 3-year-old in the country right now after that devastating performance yesterday. You know, without getting into politics, he can't race. But a big performance down at Oaklawn, the 101 Beyer for Mystic Dan.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a change in tactics for him, a horse that I thought would be a little bit better suited to be more of a sprinting type, as he did have that 96 Beyer when he was breaking his maiden at 5.5 furlongs, and then kind of failed to replicate that in his next two routing attempts. But they changed his running style. He was able to rally from off the pace, got a nice trip right up the rail, and you know, you were saying maybe an exaggerated margin based on the rail being a little bit good as the day went on at Oaklawn, but he still ran that race and was able to earn that kind of a number. So you have to think going forwards, they're pretty happy.
Well, right. I mean, at this point, without Nysos, he's the performance of the day for a horse that can run in the Derby. But it was a bias-aided effort, and I think when you see those kind of performances and there's a feeling that the bias, and you know, something that David Aragona pointed out, I really wasn't paying attention all day to Oaklawn. I was on later in the day, but clearly there was a rail that was working to his advantage. He ran very well. We'll see. Will they come back in 3 weeks in the Rebel? Will they stay down there and wait for the Arkansas Derby? Will they go somewhere else? Regardless, he ran very well, and I thought the winner here, while I'm not suggesting that he would be on my top 5 or 10 list for the Derby, though I'll never make one of those lists, he did overcome the bias here to close with an outside trip and got a respectable 84 figure. And in some ways, you compare his race against the track and his 84 to a 101 so with the track, and I think the performances get very close. Now, I'm not sure either one of them is ultimately going to be a Derby horse, but I do think that it's a performance that some will underrate because they'll just look at the number and say it was a slow race. He's kind of a cool horse.
He is, and with all things considered in that race of having to come from off the pace and being out wide for the majority of that race, he did save a little bit of ground, but for the most part, he was off the rail, which was good yesterday.
Never on the rail, ever.
And the main rival that he had to run down really benefited from the racetrack yesterday, being forward, being on the rail. So I thought that was a really solid effort from him coming in from Parks, and he was really able to sort of back up that form he had at Parks and show that he kind of fits in the Derby preps here.
No, he's okay, that horse. We'll be interested to see what happens. And I guess at the end of the day, you know, the two factors, Fierceness running a clunker and the best horse, best 3-year-old in the country not being able to participate in the Derby, that suddenly this Derby that might have been less wide open suddenly becomes very wide open, and that makes it more fun. So we'll see what happens. And listen, I'm not going to completely dismiss Fierceness, but I think you have to be concerned about a horse that just, A, came back and stunk. And even if if the race got a 97 Beyer and he ran third with a 94, and you want to say it was a starting point, but that was a slow race, and I don't think anybody at this point is mistaking the first two finishers in that race as major threats for the Kentucky Derby, and that would probably even include their connections. So I don't think that his performance yesterday was, maybe you want to say it was too bad to be true, but
Well,
you got to
that's
be
kind of what we
concerned.
said about the Champagne, wasn't it? But now he's thrown in 2 subpar efforts, so maybe he's just one of those trickier horses that you don't know what he's going to bring on the day. But to have those inconsistencies going forwards, he's going to be facing tougher company, and he can't run races that aren't up to par and be successful.
Well, both times he's run badly, he's had a little pebble thrown in his path, and that's a problem. We'll head over to Naira Bets, use the promo code MATCH200. We'll match the $200 of your initial deposit. Use the promo code MATCH200. Track stats, check them out over at NairaBets.com as well. Got everybody's favorite slate, the middle pick 4, in case you don't know about it, 2, 3, and 6 for the pick 4s. We also have a $5,000 hit and split in the late pick 3 here at Aqueduct and Oaklawn. $2,500 each for those two, both here and Oaklawn. Races 7, 8, 9, and 7 and 9 at Oaklawn for the cross-country pick 5. And of course, we'll be on from 3 to 6 on FS2 covering all the races. I don't know if the graphics are yet working, but we'll take a look as we get to race number 1 at the second place finish for Next on Stage, and they are working, and we both like the favorite in this race. This horse is going to be a super short price, nowhere near the 2 to 1. You can show the video. If somebody beats him, I guess it'll be Linda Rice for me, a second-time starter for her that she claimed from Norm Cassidy that did no running. But she had a horse that did no running yesterday that she had claimed down at Churchill, and that horse managed to win and beat a pretty bad field, but won nonetheless. And I can't find anybody else I would bet in this race.
That's completely fair. I mean, this was a horse that broke on top. Several horses in this race wanted that forward position. She was able to outlast the other speed in this race and couldn't hold off the one horse that was coming from off the pace and Six Pack Senorita. And that was her first time dropping in for a tag. And I feel as though this is a similar situation to that race, except that she projects to maybe not have as contentious a pace to work with outside of Extra Dirty. And of course, we don't know what the first-time starters are going to do, but maybe this race could set up even more favorably for her. And I just feel as though she was one that I couldn't make a strong enough case against to go find somebody else to try to beat this favorite.
She's a very likely winner at a short price, but if Brown as a biscuit is live at all, she's likely to have speed. So this is one where the pace projector can't sort of get it right. And in all likelihood, the 5 will be forwarded here unless she just can't run, which is also a distinct possibility, but she is coming back. Race number 2, you've got some horses that are in very good form in race number 2, including Chuck Willis. Now, Chuck Willis we'll take a look at, and then we'll go to a replay of the horse inside of him in Print Rack. Is Chuck Willis going to be able to outrun both Poppy's Pride and Print Rack? And is Chuck Willis going to continue to run races that show he belongs in the Breeders' Cup Sprint?
I think that those are both extremely fair questions to ask. And I will say, at least for him, rather than a horse like Print Track, it's not as though he had never run fast races at all in his career, but he was a different horse when he was running those Beyers in the 90s on synthetic and turf. And his form had really started to decline following that missed time from July of 2022 to December of 2022. It had been a long time since we had seen that kind of horse, especially when he switched over to the dirt. He was not running numbers anywhere near the kind of number that he ran last time in that race, getting a 93 Beyer, and I just want to see it again as he deals with other speed, as he steps up in class again, second off the claim.
I don't know what to do with horses like this. Their performances are brilliant, but you do have to ask yourself where they came from, and I think the same could be said for Print Rack in his last start. I mean, this was a crazy fast race, and even though the 97 was high, so it was a 94. Whatever you want to look at, Timeform US has the race very fast as well, and the problem for him is while he draws inside, and he has rated in 1, he's tough to get the lead here. The other thing, of course, is we had yesterday that had a very strong rail, and we've had an unusual amount of biases lately on our racetracks. Now, the track is harrowed. It's listed as good. I imagine it'll be fast. It's amazing how long it's taken to dry. I'm not exactly sure what went on because it's so unusual here that it's taken this long for it to dry because we didn't get that much rain, but nonetheless. So you have to wonder about the racetrack. At least he draws the inside, and I'll say one thing. I don't think there's any rider here yesterday that was more aware of the rail than Jose Gomez, who really was sticking to that rail and doing it very successfully, and he did it on Pat Quick's horse in that
Liberty
maiden race as
Central,
well.
yeah, that
never
really
leaving the rail.
exemplified how aware he was of where he wanted to be on the racetrack. He saved every inch of ground with that horse, and you could really tell in that race especially that we were dealing with a good rail because of how much he was able to draw away by to win that race.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could tell it in quite a few races. So anyway, we both picked Victorious Way. Why don't you talk about him?
He's just been facing tougher horses. I mean, two back, he beat Ocean's Reserve on September 16th, an 82 buyer that day, and ran a similar 81 buyer when he was third behind Divine Armor and a very informed 24 Mamba. And while his last race wasn't that good, and maybe he's not moving in the right direction.
It was terrible, his last race.
I'm a little bit nicer about the adjectives that I used than you, but you're right.
He
Yes,
was beaten
it
by
was
20
not
lengths,
good.
and he got a 52 buyer. It was a terrible
It was
performance.
not good. But I will say, the race two back, he was a little bit closer to the pace than the two horses that beat him, and he made the first move after the leading duo was backing up. He was towards the inside last time out in a mid-pack position, really just did not fire. But that field compared to this one, taking out the two races, most recently for Chuck Willis and Print Track, is a better field than he's going to be facing today.
No, I think he's very logical if you can excuse his last race. If he was the favorite in here, I wouldn't have picked him, but he's probably going to be the third choice in here, so I took him. The entry, so you like Sunrise Journey, I like Beachwalker.
Oh, I'd said 1-1A, so I didn't have a big preference. Sunrise Journey, I feel as though he has those races to go back to that were much better in the past. His last recent one, not at all. But Beachwalker, a horse now going first off the claim, he's one that will not need to be involved early, especially if we do see some pace up front, and will be coming from off the pace. And if he runs his race two back, he's right there.
Yeah, I kind of just want to see it again from the inside too. And I don't, I have no idea what David Jacobson's horses. Anyone's guess is either you have information or you're guessing with him, because his horses will run big one day. And that horse that jumped up and ran an 87 buyer out of absolutely nowhere and crushed the field, she went down to Oaklawn and did her day and was even money, and she finished fifth. So
the ones
who
that are
knows?
going to Oaklawn are kind of not performing, but sometimes they'll come right back here and suddenly run races that you couldn't expect to see.
It's very hard in handicapping, and this is an issue that we've dealt with trainers, when there are certain trainers whose the PPs are not of any value in handicapping races, and that becomes very problematic. Race number 3 at 1 1/8. Why don't you talk about Midnight Trouble?
He's just been facing better horses. I mean, now dropping in for a tag, he's a horse that's likely to be forward in this spot. And while he didn't fare well in his last race, if you go back to his race two back, I actually thought he ran pretty well while being forward in that race against horses like Quality Chic, who he came back and he ran very well in the Queens County behind Crouppy. So I just think that he's getting some very logical class relief. He's a horse that projects to be forward in a race where maybe Boss Making Boss Moves is the horse to beat, but he gives himself so much work to do early on in his races, and it's just very hard for me to pick a deep closer on top.
Yeah, I think Boss Making Boss Moves will be much closer. I think Kendrick's going to sense that he has to be a little bit closer in here. So I don't think that he will be as much of a victim. Midnight Trouble was on a dead rail 2 races back, and I thought ran pretty well. He's a horse like Victorious Wave, who did not run well last time out, but they were better horses, and I'll give him a chance on a dry track. I don't know why I did it. I just wanted to have some video. We'll show Alla 2 races back where he did run a race good enough to win, but the reality of Alla, while we both have him third, I just don't think he's as good as some of these horses. I think Boss Making Boss Moves and Midnight Trouble are just better horses. But I guess in this field he can win, because our horse didn't run well last time out. And as you say with Boss Making Boss Moves, he's a little bit of an unreliable type.
Right.
I'm hoping he's a little bit closer. And at least with Alla, he's going to be forward.
Going to be
and if
closer.
the track ends up being similar to yesterday, well, he's
definitely
going to
want
be
him.
an inside speed type, and he's going to be helped by the racetrack, so that'll elevate him a little bit. And it's just, I mean, there's so many horses I just don't want. I mean, Union
Right.
Lights can't win. Winning Combination, he wins, I have to lose. I haven't liked him at all. He's had a million chances to win races. And Portos is the same thing. I mean, I guess, who knows if Portos wakes up, because he has a race 4 back that would beat this field. But the rest of his races are so blah, and he's a slower. At least Boss Making Boss Moves at one time in his life had some speed.
Yeah,
Portos
yeah,
has never had
he
any
was tough
speed.
for me to make in here. With Ala, I do really feel as though he's a horse that could be very dangerous if we do see a similar track dynamic that we did yesterday. And I do think that he was against a tougher field in his last start, and now getting back to the starter, or dropping in now for a $50,000 tag, so kind of similar to that allowance race that he was in two back, where he was able to get the win. That he is getting, in a way, a little bit of class relief, even though he is dropping in for the tag.
Not a super tough spot. Race number 4. I'm not trying to beat Rebo's Valentine in this race. I think that she's just way better than these horses. Ray Handel doesn't have great numbers dropping down. First time for tag at the Dirty 7 for 48, $1.90 ROI, but he's also got a $36 horse in there, so it's closer to $1.45 without the horse. But in this field, I'm not trying to beat Rebo's Valentine. I just think she overlays them.
Yeah, and I mean, she was wide versus a good rail 2 starts ago that Temperamental was able to take advantage of on the 19th of October. Her second place finish behind Security Code at Saratoga on the 1st of September almost definitely gets the win in here.
Better horses.
Exactly. I am trying to beat her, though, with a horse that I feel as though was against the racetrack in her last start with Rosie Byrne. She spent a lot of time towards the inside early on in that race, and that was a day where you did not want to be on the rail on the 11th of January. And so she was kind of in behind horses towards the inside and never really got off the rail until the very late stages of that race, because another horse was backing up in front of her. Once she did swing wide, she really had nothing. But these aren't horses that you can start and stop with.
Right. My problem with her is, okay, fine. I have no problem with that. What about her prior 2 races?
They haven't been good.
Right, that's my problem with her. I just don't see any good efforts. I have so little regard for the field. I have Fancy Feline second here.
I've tried her a couple times.
She's never won a race when she hasn't gotten an absolutely perfect trip and a dream setup involving gold rails or fast paces. But the one rider that's had success on her is Trevor McCarthy. I think he rode her in both of her wins. He definitely rode her in one of them. I think he rode her in both of them. See what happens in race number 4, which kicks off the pick 6. Race number 5. And a 1 1/8 here. We'll take a look at Clever Forever. I screwed up and sent in the wrong video. I should have sent in the video that Rafua won when Clever Forever was second. But I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure that Clever Forever didn't run the better race from Rafua. I think that Rafua got the better trip. I don't think it was Kendrick's fault. He sort of had no choice where he was, whereas Rafua, Trevor gave a very good ride staying inside.
Yeah, he did.
I won't be surprised if these horses win. I just didn't want to pick them.
I agree with you. These are the types of horses that are likely winners of this race. I just have a lot of trouble taking a horse that has been a short price multiple times over and over and failed to get the job done, like Clever Forever, or a horse like Rafua, who took those 20 starts to finally break his maiden. While he's ultra consistent, I mean, you can't take that away from him, that he was always kind of right there and racking up those second place finishes. I just wanted a horse that had seen the winner's circle more than once.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes these horses win and they start winning again. And Rafua,
Yeah.
of course, has finished first twice in his race. He was disqualified in one of his other wins. I don't know. I don't have much idea here. I went to the number 3, Horse Be With You, who I do like in this race. This is a horse that was on a dead rail last time out. And I thought that, I don't want to really blame Eric. He was kind of asking the horse along. But he's got to find a way for him to hold his position better.
He does keep dropping back and then sort of re-engaging, and I don't like that. But you bring up a good point about the rail, and I also thought that that was a pretty salty group that he was facing, and this might be an easier spot.
Okay. Talk about Uncle Marty.
It was kind of a weird ride for him last time, where he was a little bit keen towards the outside, but overall it was just a subpar effort. I mean, he really didn't do much running, and he was just bad, but at the same time, he did have a big work on January 30th, best of 74 furlongs and 47 flat, and he does have a race to go back to at this distance that would make him fit at a price. So where I really didn't trust horses like Clever Forever or Rafua at shorter prices, I did want to give him another opportunity in the Mike Maker barn to maybe get back to one of those races that he had shown he could run in the past.
Okay, that's the first 5. We'll be back with the late pick 4 after a quick break.
For almost 150 years, the Saratoga name has been synonymous with the finest quality, sustainably sourced spring water available anywhere. Saratoga carries on the rich tradition of its forefathers by crafting each stunning blue glass bottle with the same attention to detail and care that has been its hallmark for generations. Visit SaratogaSpringwater.com today or ask for us by name at your local market or restaurant. Saratoga Spring Water. Make every day exquisite.
Welcome back to Talking Horses. Sarah Bodway and Andy Serling. Thanks to our friends at Saratoga Spring Water as well. Race number 6. Good old Bustin' Shout. He's in pretty good form, and he did get it done last time. We'll take a look at his race. He was kind of a fortunate beneficiary of some other horses not getting great trips, but you have to give him credit. He's in good form, and I think his good form makes him a major player in here, because there's a lot of horses in here that I just
Are not
think
in
they're a
good
little
form.
questionable right now.
Right, and I mean, even the second place finish behind Don't Be Late 2 races ago, that's a horse that's also in very good form that he was facing. He ran the same 77 Beyer speed figure to get the win in his last start, and he did have to wait a little bit to get out in the clear for some running room in here. So I feel as though he just makes a lot of sense in this race, and he was beating Big Engine, who did return with that big effort.
Who'd you pick in this race?
I ended up going off the reservation a little bit towards the outside with the number 7, Breaking Stones, who his last race was also really, really bad. But at the same time, when you look at who he'd been facing in the past at Finger Lakes, he was running against the likes of the Institute, a horse that we saw come here and win with an allowance race, much tougher company that he's going to be facing in here. So I kind of thought to myself, what price would a horse like the Institute be in a spot like this if he was coming here from Finger Lakes? And I think that he would be a relatively extremely short price. So while he was able to sort of keep company with that one and actually finish ahead of him in some of his starts in the past, I thought that maybe this might be an appropriate class level for him coming here. And I think you always sort of wonder, where do those Finger Lakes horses fit relative to the NYRA circuit? And I think that this might be a good spot for a horse that kept decent company over there.
I generally find that it's not necessarily where they fit, it's whether they can bring the Finger Lakes form to New York. Some of them do and some of them don't. He has run well in New York in the past. I took 6%, who's cutting back from the 1 1/8 last time, and we'll show his race 2 back, and he should have won this day.
This was a tough beat for you.
It was just a horse that should have won. He didn't break from the gate, and he lost by a nose to a horse that ran very well in Tommy Gunn. I'm not going to deny it. He was very game on the inside, but he ran well. I like him turning back. I like him dropping into this spot. You know, I mean, he was 7-1 in this race. I assume he's not going to be 7-1 today. So he's a price. He is a horse that, you know, much like your horse, he's camera shy. And both these horses have 4 wins and 34 starts. They're very similar if you look at their records. And that bothers me a little bit, because the truth is, trip or not, he should have won this race, and he did a little bit of hanging at the end to not get there. Having said that, I thought he made sense. I thought the 3 and 4 were the 2 logical horses I wanted to use in here. I was wondering if Writer's Regret could run a little bit better, but I was disappointed in his last effort. We'll see how he does in this race. He is a horse that has good past races. Can he find those races? I just wasn't overly optimistic. And Warrior's Revenge is another one. I wonder a little bit if he can sort of find those races.
And he should be forward in here.
He was terrible last time.
He was. 6% is a horse that effort 2 back that we showed, that was a big performance for him, and he had kind of been a little bit disappointing in several starts between his last win and that race. So it was nice to see him sort of refine some form and run well again, and maybe now getting back to a preferable distance with a little bit class relief from his last race, he could find that same race that he ran last time.
From
or
a
2
speed
back,
figure
rather.
standpoint, he actually ran a better race last time out. Race number 7. We'll start with Natural Harbor down on the rail for Linda. I have trouble endorsing, and we both have this horse in the mix, but not on top, a horse that's now lost consecutive races at particularly short prices, especially for a trainer who wins.
I guess it's a good sign that she's not dropping this one back in for a tag, but at the same time, you're right. This is someone who is very sharp with the horses she claims and where she's able to spot them appropriately. And obviously the wagering public thinking that this horse fit at the level that he was last time and in the race prior to that, where he finished second to Narciso Dali. But I can't take this horse at a short price again after he's failed to get the job done 2 consecutive times, and I feel as though you feel the same way.
Yeah, he can win the race. Let's talk about the horse we both picked on top.
He was just facing some tough starter allowance company in his last 2, and I like him cutting back from the mile a little bit. He just really never seemed comfortable in behind horses towards the inside, behind the leading duo, and I'm not really a big kickback person, but it seemed like he really resented it in his last race. And I felt as though his race 2-back against a horse like Colonel Vargo in American Law actually would put him in the mix in here. I thought he would be forward in this spot. And if he can find that race 2-back, I thought that he made some sense at what was going to be a better price than his uncoupled stablemate.
Colonel Vargo raced an extremely good race. He set a very fast pace going 7 and lost to a horse that was in extremely good form. I thought if you get back to his races 2 and 3 back, he's going to be extremely tough. What happened last time at a mile, I don't know. Maybe he's gone the wrong way. I don't know. Horse is going the right way. He's coming off the claim as MB's Money. Now, he was claimed from Jimmy Ferraro, who's been extremely hot, basically, at Aqueduct, certain maybe the last couple of months. And we'll take a look at his win last time. I thought he ran well last time, but it was a conditional claiming race. And I just feel as though he's a horse that's running against much better company in horses like both of Linda Rice's horses. And even Uncle George on the outside, who's not a winning type, just won for 16. And I don't trust him at all, but I think he's run very well in both his races, Uncle George. And I do think he's a contender in here, just doesn't win.
Right, I know those 2 consecutive seconds are a little concerning, but Hatch and Capone are both horses that Hatch's performance that day would make him tough in here, and Capone's a horse that's been in very good form as well, and MB's Money is in good form, but I agree. I feel as though this is a tougher spot for him overall, and while he is stepping up off the claim in here, if he can bring that type of consistency to a level of competition like this, he's dangerous, but I didn't really want to take him stepping up either.
And I can't take David Jacobson because I can't guess from week to week which one of his horses are going to show up or not show up. And playing a guessing game with a barn is just a disaster for horse players. Race number 8, a significant amount of scratches in race number 8, taking 5 players and 3 betting interests out of the race have changed things dramatically and also took a little bit of the speed out of the race, which is going to hurt the horse that I have on top, and that's Portage. Now, Portage did not run well at 6 furlongs, 2 races back, in finishing second to a horse promising horse, 3 Rivers, who lost the next start. You can show the last race for Portage. Didn't seem interested. I feel as though if she runs her good races, she's going to be very tough. I don't know, 6 furlongs? I wish she had a little more distance, but I wonder if 2 back it wasn't really the 6 furlongs because she didn't run anywhere close to the same kind of race. She was nowhere near the pace. And last time out, this is a pretty strong pace. She ran huge in this race. Where's she been, though, and will she do it at 6 furlongs? I don't know. I thought it was between her and Lilu. But I'm scared of Taming the Tigress. She has a little look of a Jacobson that might run as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. With Portage, it was really the distance. When I was thinking about these top 2 horses that I felt were contenders, that I thought that maybe she did benefit a little bit from getting a little bit more ground to work with. The 6 furlongs, maybe a starting point, maybe a little bit too sharp for her, and maybe she prefers to be forwardly placed, and going this sprint distance might not be able to have that same sort of early interest and might not be what she prefers to do. But obviously she's very dangerous and talented, and that's kind of what led me to Lilu, just thinking that she prefers to go a little bit shorter. She's obviously helped by some of the scratches in terms of speed in here, and I thought that this was more what she wanted to do rather than
Here's her race 2 back.
Portage.
Sorry, we can show the Iroquois, guys.
I mean, if she runs this race, she's going to be awfully tough. This was a big effort.
Right. She is a horse whose best races have been on wet tracks. But she's also run well on dry tracks, so I don't worry about her running well on the dry track. She might be a little bit better on wet tracks, but obviously, as you said, she runs this race, she's going to win. I don't have any knock on her. I've been a fan of Lilu since she first started racing, and I think she's the horse to beat in this race.
Yeah, this was a brave effort. I mean, she got rid of all the other speed in this race. She couldn't hold off Sterling Silver, who was 2-5 in here. The race earned a big figure, and I know she regressed a little bit last time when she finished second, going from that 95 buyer to a 75, but she's not really a 95 buyer type of horse. She's kind of more that mid-80s type, and that might be more realistic of what we'll see from her today.
Taming the Tigress is a funny horse. Now, she has absolutely no speed, and I think that's a concern when the scratches came in, yet David Jacobson scratches the one that was going to be forward in here. Now, I don't know if it was a vet scratch or a steward scratch. I don't know what the story is and why they were scratched, but she has a certain randomness to her. She's the one who finished third to her stablemate, who out of the blue ran that huge race last time, the one I mentioned going to Oaklawn Park that didn't run a step. She has back races that are very, very good and can beat this field. And I always worry about these Jacobsons that have those back races. And now with the 2 scratch from here, her price will be fair. I'm going to use her a little bit. This is one I'm scared of. And even Crypto Mama, who's going to benefit. It may be too much of a turn back for her, but 1 1/8 miles was too far for her.
Right.
And her race 2 back was extremely good.
Yeah, it was a game effort. She should be forward in here. She benefits from those scratches, as you mentioned. They put the blinkers on. She's going to be forward no matter what, with or without that equipment. So maybe she ends up being the one to be
She may
really
be the speed.
aggressive.
She might be the lone speed.
Yep.
I think Lulu will be closer to her, but she's not quite as
She's
fast.
not going to be far away, but you're right. I think that Crypto Mama will be the one in front.
Race number 9. I'm just not trying to be collected special. I thought about it. I tried. I don't trust her. He overlays this field by so much, it's ridiculous. So I'm not going to pick against a horse. It's going to be 3 to 5, but you have, and we'll show a replay that involves your horse, the Delaware Boys, finishing 3rd with Arco Augusto running 2nd, and have at it.
I mean, collected special, obviously the horse to beat. I just didn't want to pick this one on top at what will be a short price, even though I do agree that he is the likeliest winner. And I kind of have a thing for the Delaware Boys that's developing, because he really missed the break in one of his races and overcame that to run well. Then he was a little bit too forward and keen and got involved with the speed and faded. And then in this race, he missed the break a little bit again, but I thought he actually ran on pretty bravely to overcome that and to be the one lasting as far as the horses that were forwardly placed, whereas the horses that finished ahead of him were rallying from far, far back. So I felt as though he did more of the work in that race than Arco Augusta did, and I want to give him another chance at what's going to be a big price, even though collected special is probably going to beat him.
Yeah, I mean, yes, he ran better than Arco Augusta. I couldn't agree more with you. On the other hand, the speed of the race finished 4th ahead behind him. So it's not like the race just completely incinerated.
You're right.
But I agree with you. I mean, listen, the wise guy horse in here is Diane's retiring. Rick gets this horse from Charlie Baker, who's a pretty good trainer. Now, having said that, this horse's first race was good enough to at least be a fringe contender, depending on what the 8 does. So I've got the horse 2nd going to Rick, but coming from Charlie, I don't know. It's an improvement, really. I tried to be collected special. I just gave up eventually and put him on top. But I have no problem with the idea of betting against him. It is weird. He was scratched out of the $40,000 race to run in this race for $25,000, and with the 40, he wasn't scratched. Was he scratched out of? No, he was scratched out of the race on Friday. He wouldn't have won anyway.
Right.
Ronnie Valenti's first-time starter buried the field.
I mean, I guess in a way you have to wonder a little bit, because he has run competitively at the maiden special weight level against some horses that went on to run in the New York Stallion Series stakes and other stake races. So maybe it's
a
little,
dump.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with that. The last race yesterday got an impressive 31 buyer yesterday, by the way.
Whoa.
Yeah, well, when a horse wins against the bias like that horse did, the figures are usually not that high. I think that's what made yesterday's Withers winner actually even more
Even more
impressive.
better.
It still was
Yep.
a respectable figure against the track. Anyway, Sarah, thanks so much. Head on over to Naira Bets. If you're not a member, no better time than the present. Use the promo code MATCH200. We'll match the $200 of your initial deposit. What do we have? We have the track stats. Head over to Naira Bets. Get more information on those. We have the middle pick 4, races 2, 3, and 6 of our 9-race card. We have a $5,000 hit and split, 25 and 25, the late pick 3, and I assume that's the, when you say, I would call it the last pick 3.
The verbiage
To
is
make
a
it
little
clear, because there is no
confusing.
such thing as the late pick 3. It's not like the pick 5 when you have rolling pick 3s. So let's say it's the last pick 3 at Aqueduct and or Oaklawn. But you may want to check Naira Bets for details on that. What else do we have? Cross country pick 5. That's late, but it's on its own. 3 here, 2 at Oaklawn. And America's Day at the Races, 3 to 6 today on FS2. We're done. Chris Griffin, though, he's just getting revved up. By the way, I could not do that twice.
That is really impressive.
That's impressive.
That's mayy the coolest thing I've ever seen
Do
you
you think
do.
if I threw the paper and it's
I
sitting
think
on
that you
its
have to
edge?
leave that
If Johnny
there
wasn't sleeping, he would show the
as,
camera.
as a relic.
It's kind of impressive.
It's like an open book.
That's, no, Johnny, that
No,
was impressive.
you haven't.
That
Come
was
on.
impressive. It's sticking right against the wall. It's like propped up. Anyway, we're done. We'll talk to you later. Have a great day.
For almost 150 years, the Saratoga name has been synonymous with the finest quality, sustainably sourced spring water available anywhere. Saratoga carries on the rich tradition of its forefathers by crafting each stunning blue glass bottle with the same attention to detail and care that has been its hallmark for generations. Visit SaratogaSpringwater.com today or ask for us by name at your local market or restaurant. Saratoga Spring Water. Make every day exquisite.